You could have tell it was this is a, when you open the door, it's a water model. But that's a kitchen. The biggest thing was to find a kitchen that I could put a table on, and I didn't have to have that obnoxious sit at that. I have a high island, so you could put it on
we'll
a
see
table
how it
and
goes.
get on that dining.
It might even be the
That's
same.
going to go right there.
Go ahead.
Because we had a CD.
And you know what I lived there?
Remember that in the plat?
Hi, Bill.
Carrie,
Bill, this
Carrie,
is my son.
did
Tim.
you want this put over
He's
there?
gonna
sit here?
No, you
He's
can.
sitting right there. This is Bill.
Bill, how you doing? Tim
Good
Flair.
morning.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you, too.
No, I overdid it yesterday, so I'm paying for it.
Can't do that.
I know, but I felt good.
Then you overdo it for 2 days.
See too much.
So you're the offspring?
I am.
It's, there
I
wasn't
know.
a
I
cellar.
believe me. I know what you're thinking.
You got any bad news about them that you can tell us?
Yeah, but they probably have more on me, so I got to be careful with that, right? It's all about whose skeletons are worse.
Okay.
You know? Mine might be worse, but we'll see.
I doubt that.
Oh, good.
True. You guys have got to know them.
I know
take it.
him.
Yeah.
He's my brother from another mother.
Apologies. Okay.
They don't have
So
a powder room.
this is very simple and easy kind of thing, so very conversational. I'll kind of walk you through what I did and kind of my experience. It was my first time going to Israel, but let me step back. So as you all know, I'm Don and Carol's son, and I had an opportunity to go to Israel through what is the Jewish United Federation of Chicago. And there's many of those federations throughout the country, but this is one that I happen to participate and donate and kind of work through. So it all started about, I've been doing stuff with them for many months now, and quite honestly for several years, just in a different capacity. A good friend of mine came to me in late July and said, hey, we're doing a solidarity mission trip to Jerusalem, and wanted to know if you wanted to participate. There's many different types of missions that you can go on and everything like that. With regards to what I did, so there's ones where you can go and you can do lots of helping out, engaging, and kind of just different kinds of interactions, I guess, with the people of Israel. And so for me, this one was kind of potentially a business opportunity as well as a solidarity mission. So I ended up, usually they're a little bit larger. Usually they're not as nice. The one I went on was very catered to a very, very specific group of folks that were going with us. Business owners in Chicago, executives, typically is kind of reserved for some of these larger types of engagements that they do. So this one happened to be one of those. I went with three total gentlemen from the Chicagoland area. One of gentlemen was Skip, and I'm missing his last name, I apologize for that. He owns a brokerage firm here in Chicago, or in the Chicagoland area. Another gentleman by the name of Steve Sarowitz, who was raised Jewish but ended up converting to the Baha'i faith, which is a faith that has approximately 9 million followers within it. And I'll kind of get to some of the details on why he was part of this initial solidarity mission. And then myself and another friend of mine from the Deerfield area. So we were all part of this. The reason that I'm kind of pulling up the map of Israel is because I had never been, and it was lots of kind of learning experience for me on kind of Israel at a whole. And so I'll talk through a lot of this, but some of the interesting things that I don't think people necessarily know or recognize or understand about Israel is how small it is. You know, as you can see at its furthest points, it's about 290 miles from the very tip down in this area over here, all the way up to the northern part, where you're gonna see that. You can see that pieces of it are kind of, as you guys are aware, like the West Bank probably and Gaza, as you probably know. But it was just fascinating to me to know that it's this length, about 290 miles, and then at its shortest point, it's about 6 miles across here. But you can kind of see the geography of it. So it was very interesting to me because it was something that I never put together, you know, and I don't think most people probably do.
Is that where the problems are right now, West Bank?
There's always problems there. So there's always stuff going on over there. But Gaza is really where everything that you're hearing in the news and everything that you're going on in today's kind of world, that's where a majority of what you're hearing in the news is coming from, is that Gaza area. About 2 weeks after I got back, there was probably, maybe you heard of it, or heard about it, there was a bus bombing in Jerusalem that was probably, I don't know, a mile and a half, 2 miles from where I was actually staying in Jerusalem.
Tim, what year was this? Is this just recent?
Yeah, this was 2 months, this was August of 25.
Okay, so you're there with all this horrifying stuff.
Correct. So going on with it, you know, and you know, they're very good about turning away. They're very cognizant when you come into Israel, how they're going to, you know, search you. Why are you coming here? What's your purpose here? They're very diligent
I'm
about
surprised
this
they
here.
didn't let you in.
Part of it helped because I was coming from the Federation, you know, so there was a lot of things like that. I mean, they're still welcoming tourists, and in fact, that was one of the things that I talked to them about was, you know, how is tourism happening? And, you know, a lot of people think of it, or at least I did, in the fact that you kind of think it's mainly Jewish people that are going. But the misconception is that there's even more Christians that are flowing into Jerusalem to hear about all of the history and everything that's going on there. So they've seen a decline in that tourism side of things as well, and so that is, you know, that's having an effect because they do count on tourism. I mean, it's a very technological state. It is also, you know, I always had the misconception that it was very deserted and dry, and that's another thing that, well, yes, but they have their own water reclamation facilities. 85 to 90% of the water that is run off there is recycled to be reused in the whole growth and growing of their agriculture and everything like that. So there's, I think the thing that I kind of recognized or saw first or initially is just the, we hear what we're told, and until you get there, you really don't understand kind of what it's all about and kind of the people and who they are and everything like that. So I just wanted to kind of start off with, this is kind of, you know, obviously a map of Israel. I flew into, so they now have direct flights going into Israel, but I flew into Tel Aviv via Munich. And one of the guys that I was with, you know, just kind of, I'll tell some sidebar stories, but again, feel free to ask questions or anything like that. But one of the stories that he had told me when he had gone, he's been probably half dozen to a dozen times himself. He's in his mid-50s or early 50s. And one of the stories that he told me was when he flew into Munich, and, you know, because Israel historically has other areas or wings within because they do multiple checkpoints to get you into Israel. Very diligent about that, as I said. He had said when he got there, the first time that he went to Munich was they had asked him, or he was saying, hey, I need to find this other flight into here. And they're like, oh yeah, that's in the dirty part of the airport. And he's like, well, what do you mean dirty part? It was a slur against Jews. You know, like, this is where we're going to hide you over here. It's dirty. We're still not a part of it. So you're still seeing some of these things going on and continuing. It's getting much better, but you're still seeing that isolation around Jews in general. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like little stories like that that you hear about that you don't hear necessarily to us as, you know, the general population of America. But when you get over there, you start to see these things kind of coming to, I don't know, you're just hearing more and more about them. And I think the thing for me was really the people, such a very welcoming people, even with everything that was going on. They were very welcoming to us. They were very engaging with us, asking stories about us and who we are and everything like that. So it was a 7-day journey. I got there on Sunday, or I left Saturday and came back Saturday, basically. So Saturday to Saturday. You know, and so again, ask questions. I'll kind of continue to throw maps up so you can kind of see where we were at. But just at a very high level, I started off in Tel Aviv, came down to this area of Israel right next to Gaza for the first day. And then we ended up going up to Haifa, which is up here. And then we worked our way back into Tel Aviv. And then on the last day, which wasn't part of the Consolidarity mission for myself, my friend and I went over to Jerusalem. The rabbi who had married him walked us around Jerusalem and kind of took us.
Use this as a point.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I hope not to break the TV here and stuff. So it was kind of like an up and down. One of the things that I thought was very interesting and something that we all, or at least I know I take for advantage, is the fact that you get there and immediately they're telling you, here's your storm shelter, here's where you go and hide when you start to hear those sirens going off. So every place that we went to, that was the first thing they told us. Most of them were like, maybe a bit much, don't sleep naked, because when the sirens go off, you don't have time to grab anything. So you're going to be in the room with whoever at whatever point in time. So, very interesting to learn, something we take for granted here in America, quite honestly. I mean, I know I do. I don't think about it. I don't, I never worry about when I go to bed, hey, I'm not going to have to be woken up by a siren of a missile attack.
Did you hear anything while you were there?
I did not. So some interesting facts, and I didn't even share them with my wife at this point. When we were in Tel Aviv the first night, less than 2 blocks away from where we were at, there was a terrorist attack, but they foiled it because they caught the terrorists before they could actually deliver any explosives or anything like that. So I never heard any sirens. When we were on our way to Haifa, the night before, there were bombs or missiles being launched from Lebanon. So it was very, I'll kind of do this too. So coming in here. So when we were in Haifa, you're about 15 to 20 miles from this border here. One of the things that I also found very interesting as I was hearing the stories is, as you can see, Israel is surrounded by Muslim states, Palestinian states. Little fact, none of those states or areas want to take the people of Gaza or the West Bank. Okay, Israel is the only one who's actually accepted them and carved areas out for them, who's tried to work for that 2-state nation. So something to, think about that we don't hear a lot about, quite honestly, is that all of the nations around them are Muslim-supported nations, and none of them want to welcome anybody from Gaza or from the West Bank. And it used to be that up through, at one point, Jordan had accepted the people from like the West Bank area, but because they weren't willing to kind of abide by some of the other Muslim laws, they said, we don't want you here. So it's just interesting things like that we don't hear a lot about. We just hear Israel doesn't want this, doesn't do this. They're the only ones who are actually allowing the Palestinians of the West Bank and of Gaza to be a part of that. Some of the other things, and I'll talk more when I get into some of the stuff when we get down to where we're near Gaza. I'll save that and we'll talk. So let me ask, has anybody been to Israel before? No? Okay. It's an amazing place. I recommend it to anybody. I mean, I know the focus for the most part, probably for most of you in here, would be around that Jerusalem area because of the history of Christ and everything that went on and went there. One of the things that I didn't realize going into this is that there's multiple levels of being a Jew and different types of areas. But one of the interesting is that you will see in Tel Aviv, it's a much more open Jewish population. It's a younger city, so to speak. It's very reminiscent for me, and I've got a couple pictures where you can see it, but it's very reminiscent of like Miami. That's kind of how I see it. Very hip, very young, very vibrant, lots going on. They've got a huge technology sector, as probably most of you know. Most everybody's using some sort of Israeli technology at some point in their day, and quite honestly, throughout their life. So the Jewish people of Tel Aviv are different than the Jewish people of Israel or of Jerusalem because of just kind of the religious aspect of it. They're a lot more open with their clothing in Tel Aviv. They're whereas in Jerusalem it's a lot more of the coverage, and they're keeping their body covered. It's so it's very interesting to see that. And From Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, you're talking about 35 miles or so. So very, very close. Everything, correct. Everything is very, very close here. So it's when you hear of these missile attacks, or hey, this attack is happening, what you're not on, one of the things that isn't understood is they have minutes, if they're lucky, to take shelter before when an attack's happening. There's not a bunch of warning. So, and I'll talk a little bit about the kibbutz down in Gaza that we went and visited. They don't even, when they hear the sirens, they don't even go to the shelters. They drop and lay down in place because it's so close, because where we were at, we were about a mile and a half from Gaza to the kibbutz that we were at. And so a kibbutz is just a community that, Jewish people and people outside of it have decided to settle. They're wanting to take care of themselves, self-sufficient. They're going to grow their own livestock, crops. Correct, very much so. But they also spread that throughout the country. So they get stipends to be able to do these things so that they can then, share this stuff back to the Jewish community and the people of Israel. So, very high level. Any questions or anything yet? Okay. So this is just a picture. This is an aerial picture of where we actually stayed. We stayed in, like I said, we were staying above our weight class, so to speak. But this hotel right here, that is the David Kremensky hotel. So this is on the west side of Israel, and it's north would be going up this way towards Haifa, and going south would be towards kind of Gaza and Jaffa and some other areas and cities and stuff that you can see. So this is a view from our hotel. So, as you're kind of looking south along, about, I think it's about 40 minutes or so, Gaza is down there. So past the crane all the way down there. This is Jaffa, another city in Israel that you maybe heard. But it was actually a very busy time of year because it was right before school started back up for Israel. This is just one of the sunsets, just some of the things, like and you saw. I mean, this was a lot of the folks out here. Again, are people that are on their, on semester break, school break. A lot of the soldiers are still up here. I think one of the things that we continually was always getting used to is seeing people with machine guns, handguns. As an Israeli soldier, you're required to carry your firearm with you at all times, no matter what you're doing. And so it's, again, it was everyday nature for them. There was never a thought of it. Then one never thinks about it. It's just that's part of it. So you're walking through a grocery store and you're going to see an Israeli with a machine gun. Handgun is always there. Their laws are extremely strict on guns, which is very interesting. So even as a soldier, when you leave the military, you're still required to be licensed to carry it. The license itself is tied to the specific gun. You are unable to carry a gun without that, and you can only have a maximum of 50 bullets at all times with that specific gun.
Wow, interesting.
So very hard on gun laws, like people that have been served in the military, there's no exceptions, this is the law, this is how they follow it. So very interesting because again, we think of it as a very, and it is in a war, they're always in a war. I had to sign all sorts of documents when I went over there saying we're in a war,
Be prepared.
if stuff happens, tough bounce, you're going to be a part of that. You may not be able to leave or whatever. So it's always very interesting, again, because we don't hear these things, in my opinion. We're not taught about them or told about them. So again, just another view from our hotel. This specific bar area or whatever was, it just opened the weekend that we actually got there. Gal Gadot, I don't know if any of you are familiar with her. She played Wonder Woman most recently. She was at this grand opening. So there's lots of support from the Israeli people on kind of just supporting new businesses, things of that nature as well. So let's see. So right now, when we got there, part of our days we're trying to figure out where are we going to go, what are we going to do. So the first day, which would have been Monday, we took a tour around Tel Aviv, pardon me. So a lot of this is just some of the old architecture and, Tel Aviv was founded in, I believe it was 1909 is when it was actually founded, and started to build. There was a group of about 66 Jewish settlers who came into Tel Aviv and said, hey, we're going to build this up right on the coastline, and we're going to start building this city. It was, let's see, what was his name? Mir Dizengoff was the mayor at the time, and I've got another picture of kind of where he started things off and stuff. But a lot of it is, you see these areas and it's kind of a little bit worn down. There's areas throughout, but it's still affluent areas as well. It's just older architecture. And Tel Aviv is, is very new in the whole scheme of Israel. Like, you compare it to Jerusalem, things of that, so it's very new in that sense, and the conflict is, is always kind of ever present. So the gentleman on the horse and the building with the scaffolding. So what they do, and this is still kind of downtown, is, Tel Aviv, probably 3 miles or so, roughly, to the coastline. And so the gentleman on the horse, that's the what is it? What did I say? Mir Dizengoff. He was the mayor and kind of the founder and one of the 66 folks that were there as part of it. So, but what they do with the architecture is and this is the oldest building in Tel Aviv, but what they do is they'll surround it with scaffolding, but they put, like, as you can see, some of the steel beams and everything. They structure it and build it around the building so that they can then build down and secure it up there so that they can handle missile attacks. So it's what, so it's always rebuilding and building the infrastructure so that it can support attacks as they happen and hopefully maintain life and all of those things associated with it. So this is just the same guy, but this is the first spot where they all stood and made that declaration that they were going to build Tel Aviv out and everything like that. And again, just another building that you see a lot of the artwork, and I'll get into some more of that here in a few slides. But you can see it kind of looks as if it is, graffiti. But a lot of them are artists in Israel that are kind of spreading what they think and kind of the conflict that's going on. For the most part, I would say Israel is definitely a country that stands together and they work together, but they have their same internal conflicts that we do here, between the right and the left, and wanting more. When it came down to the war in Gaza, there was definitely some polarity in there, in the sense that there was the side that said, we don't care, go in and bomb them, these people are never going to stop, go in there and level it. There were people who were like, no, we've got to get our people home and then do whatever. But there's that conflict there, and so you have that conflict within the government aspect of it as well. So again, they're dealing with the same politics that we deal with, just at what I would consider more of a micro level, just because of their sheer size and their sheer population. Israel itself is not a huge population, the Jewish population is not huge, right? So you see a lot of these types of artwork as you're walking through very nice areas of bringing them home now, that type of mentality around that. And you're seeing these artists who are coming up and creating these artworks, these messages of hope and messages of trying to really bring the people home from the Gaza war. So this one was a very interesting one. It kind of caught my attention because, the IDF itself, right, the IDF itself has always been something that the Israeli people could count on. It was always they didn't mess around. You probably heard the stories about the IDF and the Mossad and all of these different types of military types of organizations within it. But the people themselves have always had a great faith in their IDF, that they will always be there to protect them, they will always be there to take care of them, no matter what. That was shaken a great deal by the attack that happened on October 7th, because I think there was a bit of potential arrogance around we're the IDF, no one messes with us. If you do, you're going to get the wrong end of that sword. Well, there was supposedly conversations, rumors floating around that, hey, we need to be more cognizant of this. There's something going on. We don't know what it is, but we know that there's things going on. And the October 7th attack happened there was delays in getting the IDF soldiers down to this kibbutz, getting it down to where the Nova Music Festival was held. And so there was a delay of like 3 to 4 hours of actually getting down there to support them. So that confidence was shaken quite a bit, and it still is, and there's still conversations going on how do we miss this, you know, because their intelligence isn't known for missing things. They're very, very on top of what they're doing. They're you know, always being driven. So it's kind of like, you know, the IDF is Superman, and it's don't panic, you know, he's here to help, he's here to do these things. So again, it's these artists who are trying to voice their opinions and kind of what's going on, but you see pictures and things of this throughout. And so there's that aspect of the confidence being shaken, and then you get into these where this one was just interesting to me because the artist itself, or the artists themselves, had to set up scaffolding to do all of this, but they waited until at sundown to do it because of Shabbat. Because Israel, their Saturday and Sunday is Friday and Saturday for the most part. And so what they did, because no one goes out, no one does anything, it's a day of rest. But the artist himself set up the scaffolding and did this behind the guise of Shabbat so that no one would mess with him when he did this. So it's
risky.
Very risky.
Yeah,
Yes. There's some serious laws about you know how you approach things. So again, artwork like this is kind of smothered throughout the Tel Aviv itself and throughout the other parts of the country. You know, you've got people that are making, you know, jokes about the government. This is a mockery of Statue of David, and just kind of making a mockery of the Israeli government getting fat and getting complacent and kind of doing things. So you see these jabs at the government, at the different political parties that are there and part of it. And it's always going on, you know, because there are those people that don't want war, don't believe in war. I mean, you've got the Hasidic Jew aspect of it, that none of their children go into the IDF because of their religion, because of their religious perspective on it. But everybody's still kind of, you know, so it was just very interesting and kind of eye-opening. This was, you know, this artist specifically went around to different areas throughout Tel Aviv and kind of drew a correlation to famous Jewish athletes and things like that. And I believe that's Sandy Koufax, I believe is that one there. So you'll see this same artist that's going throughout making these different kinds of artworks and things of that nature throughout Tel Aviv as well. This one was just an interesting one because during the attacks in October 7th, this was just a building across from a daycare center that got hit by shrapnel, and you can kind of see some of the bullets and things that had flown up and kind of all of that throughout. And you see that very much in a lot of the cities and everything like that because of the attacks that are happening consistently. And again, like these are, so this is about a lady who saves her kibbutz by coming in and disarming the gate that she's standing in front of by disconnecting the power so that they couldn't break in. So you hear these different types of stories about individuals that kind of did their own thing to kind of help their people within. And so you've got artists that are, again, out there who are talking about and kind of showcasing the power that you as an individual within have and kind of, quite honestly, are expected to do. You know, you go above and beyond at all points in times. Same kind of thing, you know, just different individuals that ended up, you know, losing their lives, and they're memorializing them through artwork and conversations of that. This is one who was an extreme that made a jab at Hamas and ISIS and kind of the reflection on homosexuality and, you know, how all of that's happening. You know, this is a little sidebar, but you're seeing, you know, so I was back at University of Iowa this past weekend with my son, and there was protesters for pro-Palestine that were standing in the common square at the University of Iowa. And what I find ironic, and my oldest son, Logan, you know, he is, he's just, you know, he's not in your face, but he's always kind of like, he'll walk by and I'll be like, you guys should just get educated, understand, read, do a little bit more, because you're seeing Palestine supporters that are homosexual or gay, lesbian, whatever. And the irony of that is that they would push you off the same roof that they're going to push the Jew off of. Like their beliefs are very against homosexuality, things of that nature. So it's just interesting when you see these things happening in our own culture here in America, and
Nothing's changed.
and it's for me, it's watching, and it's just an education thing, and I think that's just part of it, is that education, and understanding. We're fed the information that we're fed through social media, through news networks, whatever it may be, and so it's always interesting to see these people that are pro, LGBTQ, that side of it,
Yeah.
for Palestine, when if they were to ever go there, they would be killed on sight. Like there's no forgiveness, and it's kind of the same laws that, Hamas and some of these laws, that's their prime, kind of like the 10 Commandments, their number one commandment is to eradicate and kill all Jews. Like, openly say this, that's part of what, so it's just very interesting, right? We hear a different side of it, we see a different perspective sometimes, and so I think that the message that I got as I was traveling was to understand, do the research, meet the people, that makes a big difference when you meet the people and you actually are able to talk to them and understand where is their perspective, how did they, why is this happening, kind of thing. But again, you'll see extreme artwork, you'll see very positive artwork, it's just a whole thing. This is of 3 soldiers that were retired generals that on October 7th got pulled back in, and and interesting, and I'll talk a little bit about the one of the soldiers that we met. There's a sense of we're going to war. Like there's a very strong sense of camaraderie, and it's not. While it's done for the state of Israel, a lot of it is more for themselves and their friends and their buddies. And if they're going, I'm going, kind of mentality. And that was kind of the story behind these generals, is that they were in their 60s, I think, late 60s, and none of them hesitated to jump right back in, and re-enlist and be a part of it. This was just an interesting, and you'll see signs and things like that throughout Israel and throughout Jerusalem of just the number of days that the hostages have been gone. They're always remembering the people. It's so you'll see these types of things throughout, and you're kind of like, what, when I first looked up, I was like, what? Oh, okay, that was before the hostages were released and brought back. Okay, so this is the southern part that we talked about. This is Gaza all through here. This is Egypt, and then a little bit further this way, you're going to get Jordan. But this is the kibbutz Neraz. That was where we went on, that would have been on Tuesday. We went down to this kibbutz, I believe. Yeah, so that's what the kibbutz is. And so it's got its perimeter of security and everything like that. But then what you're seeing here, this is Gaza. So you can see how close they are. And so when the attacks happened, this was one of the main thoroughways into it. So all of this during the growing season is going to be different kinds of crops, peanuts, olives, things of that nature throughout on this side of it here. But they were also known for cattle and chicken, and so they raised it all within this area and stuff. But, the interesting part to me, and I'll get to some more details on it, but the people of this kibbutz specifically were bringing in Palestinians, Gazans, to actually work the farm with them. So they supported and funded the people of Gaza to come over and work on their crops and work in their fields. They brought them into their kibbutz. They were very welcoming. Several of the older generation there was also known for taking the kids of Gaza to Tel Aviv for cancer treatments, doctor visits, healthcare in general. And the people of this kibbutz specifically were very much open to that two-state. They wanted to make things work. They wanted things to happen. And so as the attack happened, we were fortunate to meet the gentleman who runs it now. both of his parents were killed during the actual attack. So he lost his family there. Very fortunate that his wife and his daughters happened to be out of town during that time frame. But you can see it's a smaller community, but they're pretty much they're independent, away from it.
What's the distance from the kibbutz to
From here,
Yeah.
just under a mile or so.
See, it looks.
It does. It looks much
big,
bigger, right?
but-
But it's basically from here to the T intersection down south where Allegheny and Peterson meet up, roughly. And during the attack, so you had that. So I'll go into this and then I'll talk a little bit about kind of the timing of it. So, and it's hard to see. So right here, sorry. You've got the kibbutz right here. So right up here, there's another IDF station, so there was actually a placement is about 2 to 3 miles away. And the people of this kibbutz were actually kind of chattering back and forth with the IDF themselves saying, hey, we know something's happening, but we don't know what. And so that was kind of, where things started to slip through the cracks, so to speak, within what was going on. How did the IDF miss this? How did the intelligence organization miss all of this and everything? So, it was pretty scary, and there's going to be some. So this is, we're at the kibbutz. You walk in. This is kind of the mailbox systems and everything like that. All of the red ones, are identifying the people of the kibbutz that were deceased. The other stickers are kind of showing the ones that were taken hostages, as hostages, and so that's entry into their formal dining area. So, that's very communal and everything, but those are some of just the bullets that you're seeing there. They're in the process. And that's another part of kind of what's going on within the kibbutz itself. I took this one, and I'll come back to my previous statement. I took this one because it's showing people that aren't Jewish that were living in the kibbutz, that came down there because they believed in what they're trying to do from an agricultural perspective, what they are doing as a community. So lots and lots of these folks were there as well, people that aren't Jewish, that were they wanted to be a part of something in their minds that was bigger than themselves.
How many people in that kibbutz?
I think it was just around 400 maybe, I think,
Okay.
yeah. So
Gives you a
it's decent.
perspective of how
It's
big
a
it was.
decent sized
Yeah.
one. I mean, you have people that are coming and going, you've got the farmers and whatnot and other folks, but a lot of it is, it's kind of the life that they've chosen. It's a very interesting life to me. I mean, I don't know if I could live in a kibbutz, but I think it's one of these things where these people believe in the community of what it's doing and what it's going to provide out there. So they're very much engaged with it and want to be a part of that. This is kind of symbolic of, this is the hall, and at the time these are all of the people that were either deceased or were taken as hostages and haven't been brought back, or they haven't gotten their bodies back, but it's all yellow table or yellow chairs to recognize and identify that.
Was this kibbutz the hardest hit?
Yes, this one and then the Nova Music Festival.
And
Between
how
the two.
many people in this?
I believe it was like 238 out of this one.
It's almost half of them.
Yeah, and it's part of the other problem is that they're struggling with the members that are there that are coming back, or the ones that got away. They're trying to understand, how do we memorialize it? Kind of like within the Holocaust. Do you save these buildings so that people remember and never forget what actually happened in them? Or do you rebuild and say we're starting anew and we're starting afresh? So there's a conflict internally in the kibbutz, because there's people that say, I want to remodel mine, and then there's people that say, no, I want it demolished. Bring in a bulldozer, tear it down, get rid of it. I want no memory of it. So
Yeah.
you've got those types of conflicts that you're also dealing with internally and stuff.
Is there anything similar in our country, like the kibbutz? Is it like a county or a state, or
No,
are they
it's still
self-governed, or?
they're self-governed to some extent, but they still have to follow the laws of the state of Israel. So
Oh, yeah.
I would say probably not proper terminology, but a hippie commune during the days.
Okay.
Where they all collectively got together, they raised their own food, they did everything as a community. They had to recognize the laws of the state that they were in, but no one messed with them. They just kind of let them do. Now, as part of the law within Israel, because of the way that the kibbutzes give back to the community, the state of Israel is required to rebuild or put money back to these folks so that they can be rebuilt if they so desire, or if they want it torn down. The state is required to do that, but there's some caveats to it. The state sometimes does it, sometimes it becomes political then, you know, and kind of what they're doing. So it's very, again, very, very similar politics to the United States, you know, and you've got that polarity and kind of where things are at. So this is the first home that we went into, and that was attacked on October 7th. You can see the fire damage. You know, they went in there and they just, they threw in fire bombs, they threw in grenades, they did all sorts of kind of just horrible, horrible things. And it really doesn't, you know, as much as you can see it, it doesn't do it true justice. You've still got the smell and the odors, and you've still got all of those things that are going on there. But this was one of the kitchens, and this was one of another part of the kitchen. I don't think I've got the picture in here, but there was one where there was, it's not the Torah, but it's kind of like one of the religious books. A lot of everything was just left as is. You know, they just left it until each individual kibbutz owner decided, or house within the kibbutz decided what they want to do. 2 weeks after we left, this one was completely torn down. So what you see, this is just in the main kind of like living quarters. This is actually where you don't see any burns or anything like this. This is where, so within each of these houses, they have a safe room, so to speak. And this was actually one of the safe rooms, left exactly as it is. You can see, to some extent over here, you can kind of see the cards and the playing cards from the children that were in there. You know, part of what came out of this is that they were modernizing these safe rooms, because these safe rooms are designed to protect you from incoming bombs, not from actual attacks. So while they have a locking mechanism, it's also handheld. So they're redesigning the windows themselves. There's no ventilation really, you know, it's kind of up to them to also modernize it to some extent, but now because of this, the state of Israel is going to help out with more modernization. One of the, let's see, what's the next one? So I'll go. One of the stories that they talked about, because they also have two-way radios and everything like that, was the conversations that the parents were having with other parents that were also in these rooms and with their children. And you know, the children were just like, we don't care, we're too hot, the smoke is bothering us, we want to get out here. But they knew, because they were communicating, that there were Gazans that were outside, Hamas that were outside their rooms waiting for them to open the doors and unlock themselves. So very horrific, you know, and very, you know, just whether they're Jews or not, any person, you know, to have to, you know, go through this. But these people consciously made the decisions to live next to an area that was very war, you know, engaged, because they believed in doing something better, right? And so this one was the hardest one for me to kind of hear about. And so just another, and you can see these are the homes and the destruction. So we didn't actually go inside this one. This gentleman, and I've got his name, I gotta write it down. It was his family, his mom and dad, who had actually passed away during the attacks. But he's kind of there to take back over the kibbutz and kind of regrow it and everything. Okay.
Is there a lot of distrust amongst the communities as a close group?
No. By destruction, you mean themselves, or explain a little bit?
Well, with your neighbor.
No, very tight. They know them. I mean, like, that's the other part within the kibbutz. They all take care of each other's children. It is truly a community in which they're supporting one another and they're helping each other out and they're doing all of these things. So no, thank you. So it's really one of these things where it is true community living, you know, and trying to raise a village, you know, to take that kind of, you know, it's everybody within it is raising them. And so it's very, very tight. So, you know, some of these people, this gentleman had, you know, folks that were in this kibbutz that helped raise him. You know, so it's like a lot of these people are lifelong people of the kibbutz. They just, you know, they go off and they do their thing after school or whatever it may be, and then they come back and they support, you know, the kibbutz. That's what they want to be. So it's kind of generational to some extent, and then you have other people that are coming in. But everybody there was affected by someone being either killed or taken as a hostage. So this story specifically was very, was very, very hard to hear and listen. So you've got a family of 5. You can kind of see them here, the mom and dad, and then they had 3 small children. While the attacks were happening, they ended up going into their safe room. This gentleman had actually done a good job of kind of protecting, and he had created deadbolts at the top and the bottom so that he could kind of lock them up, but he also was holding it. Hamas came in, ended up firing into the actual safe room. They put in about, I think they said between 40 and 60 rounds of ammunition into the room, ended up killing the mom and dad, but did not kill the children. They knew that, Hamas knew that, so they started to smoke them out.
Oh my gosh.
So it's stories like this. The kids couldn't get to the doors because the dad had already created locks that were too high for them to reach, so they couldn't even open it up, which was probably better. I suppose it depends on how you want to look at it, whether suffocation or being shot. I guess take your pick from a torture perspective if you want. But the ending story came back with the Israeli Navy SEAL team came in there and wouldn't allow. So the grandparents of these children, they had a house over here. They wouldn't allow anybody in there. These Israeli SEALs were, horrified, worst experience they'd ever seen. They'd never seen anything like it because it was the 3 bodies of these young children that died in the same room with their parents who had already been killed. So you hear these stories, and I think that was the thing again for me is you're hearing these conversations, you're hearing people tell these stories, and they're still going back and they say, hey, we still believe in what we're trying to do here. So a true kind of testament to who they are as a people, their faith in what they believe, and kind of believing that this is the right stuff to kind of do. But again, in this kibbutz, that he was telling us that, they don't even go to the shelters unless they're there. They've got about 7 to 15 seconds from when the sirens go off, depending on where the bombs are coming from before they're going to be hit. So, and there were many, many stories like this that you heard about and kind of, everything that went on with it. This one is just as we're continually walking through and everything. One of the things that I wanted to show is you see these kind of concrete girders. Those sit right on top of the school itself there. So they, have their own education system and everything like that in the sense of teaching and whatnot. Those are specifically designed to withstand bombs. So they build their buildings knowing that they're going to be attacked. So again, a mentality that we don't have. I mean, we protect from hurricanes and earthquakes and all of these things. They're building structures based upon the fact that they're going to be bombed. Again, a different, in our day and age, it's a completely different mentality. And so it was just very interesting to see the state of Israel will not remodel this because it's still fine. So the kibbutz itself is in charge of remodeling because there was no damage to the actual structure. It's all internal from the fire and smoke and everything like that. So again, all of the things that we, politically have to deal with, they're dealing with not only inside their kibbutz, but also in the state of Israel as well. So this is from the protective fence. You can kind of see the tops of it and stuff there. That's Gaza. You can see the plumes of smoke. As we were there, they were still dropping bombs on them, still firing at them. But you can kind of see, I don't know if it'll allow me to, yeah. So you can see the destruction. I mean, Israel's not holding back. And again, I think that's a very open debate on, what are they doing and how aggressive are they being? And I think that's an internal debate for them. And so it's a struggle, because you see this. This is, every morning they look out and they see Gaza over there and they see the destruction. And that's the part of the conflict that the people of the kibbutz are having because they believe in a 2-state nation. They believe that these people should have their own land and everything like that. And they've tried many, many times, many, many times have they tried and not always to the liking of the different, areas and organizations. So again, you can see some of their crops and some of the stuff, but knowing always in the back. So when I was telling, these are some of the crops, these are the things that they're bringing over Palestinians, Gazans to come in and help them with their crops. as the attacks were going on, let's see, yeah, again, just some of the destruction, but as the attacks were going on and the people were being taken hostage, some of the conversation and banter back and forth was, I took your child to Tel Aviv for cancer. And they're like, sorry, they wouldn't talk to them, they ignored them. Hey, we helped you, we gave you a job. These people were being rewarded for coming over as people that provided intelligence around what was going on within the kibbutz, where the security folks were, things of that nature. So they were betrayed by the people that they're trying to also help and empower to some extent. One of the ladies that was taken, her last name was Lipschitz, was her name. She was taken, her husband was taken, and I'll talk a little bit because we actually met their grandson. But they were saying that, because she was considered an infidel, she was a woman, and Palestinians aren't going to touch a Muslim nation, not going to. So they rolled her up into a carpet. They threw her over a motorcycle, and as they were driving off, the people that she had helped and some of the children, there were children between the ages of like 9 and 10 that were out there beating people with sticks. Then the next age group up, they were carrying rifles and firing on these people, breaking into the homes, looting them as this was all happening, to the extent that they were raiding the kitchens. They were turning on their Netflix and changing it from English and Hebrew into Arabic and sitting there watching this as all of this is going on. So again, just the horror stories of it, right? That was part of like, it's hard to wrap your head around that happening, and this was happening. So lots of conflict again, in the sense of like, how do these people come back and restart their lives over again in this kibbutz on something that they believe in so heavily and that they want to have this greater community, but now how do you regain the trust? Right. And how do you start to bring people back in to help support you, and trying to make that gap that much smaller? This was just a very interesting picture, because they had barricaded themselves in, but they went and they put mortar bombs and grenades on the outside of it, and you can see how bad it shook the whole structure. Obviously, you can see the damage it did here, but it shifted the wall, the exterior wall, another like 6 to 10 inches away from the top. All of this going on in a matter of minutes, and 20 to 30 minutes, all of this was happening. So it was trying to run. The community goes from basically, you have toddlers and infants all the way up to folks in their 70s, 80s, 90s as well. All of these people essentially fleeing for their lives, trying to get away and trying to hide from what was going on. And, so just it was very heavy, lots to take in. And, again, I'd never experienced anything like it. But the resolve, the resiliency of the people was quite remarkable, because they kept moving forward, and they're like, all right, we're going to rebuild. Again, the ones that want to, they're going to continue to do that and rebuild as part of it. Okay, so that was the, and I've got another map that I'll show you as well, kind of showing you how close it was. So that was the Kibbutz Nuraz, which is about between a mile and a half away from Gaza. And then the Nova Music Festival was held in Nahal. It was held in this area. It's not actually something that I didn't know until I did more research on it. It's not actually, the Nova Festival is a music festival that travels throughout Europe. It's just held at different locations. This one has become memorialized because of the attack. Yeah. So it's kind of saying it's the Nova Music Festival. It was, I think I've got another, oh no I don't. Let me go back just so you can kind of see real quick a relationship to so that's where the kibbutz was, right over in this area right here. No, I apologize. It's right up here. So that the music festival was up in this area. So, not too far. They were the hardest hit, and then this is where you were seeing like the paragliders come in and everything like that. So another interesting thing that I never really understood to a certain extent is that there's basically only one way in and out. It's a north and south, so they blocked off there. But the festival itself, it was an all-day, all-weekend music festival. So Lollapalooza, whatever you want to, kind of correlate it to. The attacks happened was it Saturday? I believe it was Saturday morning, 6:30 in the morning. So you can imagine Friday night, all of these kids were out enjoying themselves, having a good time. They were all in the range of 17 to 30s, was predominantly most of the people. They ended up, so you can imagine being woken up at 6:30 to attacks of, missiles. You're getting people that are flying in with paragliders. Again, at 6:30 in the morning. I mean, I'm groggy at 6:30 without alcohol. You throw in alcohol and whatever else, you're going to be a little bit, it's going to be a much more interesting kind of, take on what's going on and what the heck is happening out there. So very interesting. I didn't ever put the timing together on when it actually happened. I think it was just kind of, you saw it was daylight, so you assumed it was during the day. It was 6:30 in the morning when the first attacks happened. So very well thought out.
I was just gonna say, well planned, wasn't it?
100%, and they kept it very quiet.
Was it-
And
They attacked both places?
they did, yeah. It was, this was the first time that Hamas or any type of terrorist organization had gotten this far into Israel. Yeah, there was that, and the next stop for us was in a town called Sarat, and it was the first time that the Israeli military had to fire on their own buildings or infrastructure because the Hamas had taken over one of the police stations in Sarat. So it was the first time that you'd actually seen a tank come into Israel and fire on its own kind of ground at their own people to take it over. So, and I'll talk a little bit more on that one. So as you come in, and I don't know, so this is just kind of the memorial that they've set up, and I've got a few other pictures where I can show you some other stuff. And I don't know, we'll see if it'll play through. I don't know. And this was just me taking a video of kind of what's going on. All of these stakes are different people that lives were lost or they were taken hostage. Each of them had written, or someone had written something as a memorial about them and who they are. I don't know, we'll see. So, what they're walking up to is there was a local artist, I tried to capture a picture of it. A local artist had created all of these flowers through, it was kind of, I think it was like glass blowing and everything like that, and created all of these different flowers, put it into the Star of David here. So this has turned into a very big memorial kind of, facility. Oops. Sorry, I'll let it play up. This is just one section. This was where they were actually, some of the campers were. Main stage for the concert was behind it over here. But you can see, the outpouring and just everybody being a part of, this. So, this was, again, just, it was just very, very, I mean, it's hard to describe because, these were just kids that were out at a music festival. And so it was, just hard to, again, it's hard to wrap our heads around. We don't experience this. We don't see it. As someone said, it's kind of like you imagining LA was attacked by Pasadena.
What's that? Yeah.
And it's like, bang, it's that far, it's that close.
Sure.
And what would you do? But all throughout, they have all of these different kinds of memorialization for the people and the lives lost and everything like that. This was on what would be considered the north side of kind of where everything was at. These are all trees that the Jewish United Federation has planted to memorialize all of these people. So there's so much giving and so much, recognition. It's very, engaging in the sense of like everybody has really gotten behind it, even both sides of the policies and politics of it. So this one's a little bit, center it a little bit. So you can kind of see the destruction of what happened. You know, this is obviously the before. You know, you can see the distance from Gaza there, and then you're seeing all of like kind of where the camping and campsites and everything like that, to the stages that were different, you know, for during the concerts. But you can kind of see the aftermath of all of the just the attacks and everything that went on there. I mean, I'm happy to read this. I don't know if they can see it. It just talked about the different locations, and I'm happy to share some of these photographs off with everybody. If they, you know, I can give them to my mom and she can share them out as you'd like and see. But again, just
It's unbelievable.
yeah, it's just it's kind of mind-boggling, you know, that this happens today in today's day and age, and it's all over religious persecution, you know, and they don't believe in what they believe. And you know, one of the things that's very interesting is that all throughout Israel and the people that are in politics, you have Muslims, you have Jews, you have Christians. They're very open to, let's just live our lives, let's be good people, let's be good human beings, and they're all very welcoming. And in the IDF, you have these folks that are, you know, have Muslim backgrounds, and, you know, so they're very welcoming. You know, a lot of the, you know, that's again, that's something that I think is missed, is that if you look at, you know, how the Israeli people are welcoming in of others, they have them as part of their political, you know, infrastructure. They have them doing, you know, Ministry of Defense, things of that nature, where they're actually leveraging people that are not Jewish, but they are Muslims. And so they're, you know, so there's that conundrum, you know, there's that struggle of what we hear about Jews and kind of what the reality is. And again, there's, you know, you've got the extremes on all sides. So you know, but if you generally look at it, it's a very welcoming nation, and they want you to be a part of their state. So let's see. This was another memorial that was set up, and I'll share it with you. Let's see. These are all of the cars that were destroyed or blown up during the actual attack. I think they said there was about 1,600 different types of vehicles. So the white van in back was a van that was carrying retired folks that were headed back during this time. And I think there was 8 folks in there. Hamas stopped them on the highway and opened fire and killed everyone in the vehicle. And you're seeing things of that nature continually happen. This car on the left here was actually stolen from one of the kibbutzes, taken the hostages, drove them in their own car to Gaza, where they were then taken out of their car, and then the car was brought back. Very random acts of violence and horror and different ways, but you know, if you tried to escape or you tried to do anything, they immediately shot you on sight. Same with ambulances, everything like that. And it was very weird to see a junkyard that was all a junkyard because of the war that broke out then. So again, it's the perspective that it's bringing to light. And everything that was kind of like going on and happening during the time. So after all of that, incredibly heavy and crazy emotional up and down, we headed up to Surat, and I'll have to pull up another picture of Surat. So Surat is a town that is, it's going to be a little bit further north than where the music festival was held and the kibbutz that we were at. We went and had lunch there. You know, and throughout they're bringing in different delegates and people to talk to us about what's going on and how are they trying to make things better. And one of the people that they brought in prior to us leaving for this was a gentleman from the tank division. It was, what was his name? Sorry, right over here. Let me find it. Oh, okay, sorry. It was Amir Ellenberg was his name. So he was a reservist and someone who came in and talked to us about just kind of, he was in charge of the tank division of the organization. He was one of the guys who ended up, was part of the, he was one of the leaders, and his team was one of the teams that had to fire on Sarat police station. It was a police station that Hamas had gotten into, and you probably had seen some of these videos, depending on how much time you're online, of kind of what had happened in Sarat. And this was the furthest that anybody had ever gotten into Israel from during an attack like this. They ended up firing on this police station. It was broadcast, I think it was at like 8 or 9 in the morning when it was broadcast throughout all of Tel Aviv, because they had all of the closed circuit televisions and, you know, side of it. So you're seeing all of that happening, and then you're seeing the Israeli tank come in and firing on their police station. Everybody actually survived out of that one, so that was a good thing. You know, some Hamas and folks like that were actually killed, but that was part of the town. So we ended up having lunch there at in this town called Sarat. This is where we met this mayor, and it was very interesting. Very, very large man. He was probably 6'4", 6'5", probably 280 to 290. So just a very, very big man, but a very, very quiet man, very reserved. And again, one of the things that was so striking about it is the welcoming, how they're just so welcoming to you. Him and I had a conversation, and you know, I don't know, I converted to Judaism back in 2012. And so it was kind of, the people I was with was like, yeah, this guy over here decided to be a Jew, you know, and this Amir kind of leaned over to me, and you know, again, very hulking individual, very big, you know, and it was just him and I sitting at the table, and he's like, I got one question for you. And he's like, don't take this the wrong way. He's like, why did you convert, you know? And so I went into, you know, kind of my conversation around how I'd been raised, but also kind of the way that I kind of found Judaism, and, you know, how it meant, you know, what it meant to me and everything. And part of it was not only for myself, but also for my family. But it was almost an immediate bonding between him and I, to the extent of when we left, he gave me a big hug and he said, hey, he's like, when you bring your family back, he's like, we'd love for you to come stay with us. We'll host you as a family. Very giving, and that's how it was, always very welcoming to everybody that I met there. They were always open your doors. This guy lives in a house, I think, yeah, you know, one of the buddies that I was with, the gentleman in the middle with the bald hair that I've got my right arm around, he's a good friend of mine. He was telling me that this guy has, he's got 4 boys, all of them will go into the IDF. They live in basically a 2-3 bedroom home, but they don't care. They'll find the space for you. They're gonna make the space for you to come in and just be a part of their life and who they are and what they're all about. And they wanted to tell you their stories and just have those conversations. So again, it comes down to that whole welcoming aspect of what I felt there. I never had concerns. Again, I was definitely taking a journey where most people don't take a helicopter ride. I was very fortunate because the very tall gentleman in the back, his name is Steve. The gentleman in the Michigan hat, his name is Skip. Both of those guys are very affluent folks. Steve, and we were just, you know, he was telling us, you know, about him and his background and everything like that. He owns his own production company. His net worth's like $2.5 billion. So again, part of the solidarity is, you know, one, how do we get people to help understand what's going on, donate, be a part of it. And, you know, part of it was, now we're getting into the helicopter and we're headed north up to Haifa. Steve was raised Jewish but converted to Baha'i. Baha'i is a very opening religion in the sense that they believe in all of the messiahs. You know, they believe that they all have done it, with the caveat that theirs is the last Messiah. So very welcoming, but, with every religion, we all have our, that we hold through. But he, so that was part of the solidarity for us to learn about the Baha'i kind of religion itself. What does that tie into the Jewish folks? How is that part of it? You guys have probably all seen, or maybe you haven't, but there's a Baha'i temple in is Wilmette, I believe. Is it Wilmette or Winnetka? I think it's right there on the border. It's one of their temples as well. So yeah, it's massive. And when you see the grounds so what's very interesting is the Baha'u'llah was, and the Bab is actually the predecessor of Baha'u'llah. He was actually exiled from Persia, which is Iran. At the time it was Persia. He was exiled, he traveled around and ended up landing at Mount Carmel. And so that is considered their holiest ground or holiest place. So it's interesting because they aren't Jewish, but Israel recognizes it as their highest holy ground. There's a kind of an unspoken word or agreement that the Baha'i will not try to convert Jews to become Baha'i. So, and no one has permanent residence that is a Baha'i in the state of Israel. So it's very interesting. But that's kind of like an unspoken, this is how we're going to approach. You guys allow us to do this, and we're going to allow you to do, that. So it's kind of I guess maybe a gentleman's handshake, you would say. So we got very, very fortunate. First time I'd ever been in a helicopter. Has anybody been in a helicopter? So it's very, I don't know if you'll recall, for me, it almost put me to sleep. It was probably maybe a different experience on your, yeah, okay. Okay. For me, it was very different. This was obviously not, the pilot on the right, he was actually part of the military organization that was helping take wounded soldiers and casualties from the war back and forth to Tel Aviv on what is the Black Hawk helicopter. So he was one of the guys doing that. They actually hired him out to come and take us. So but it's definitely a different experience flying in a helicopter. I mean, to the point where I was like, all of us in the back were almost fall asleep. Steve, the tall gentleman, he sat in front and he was out almost instantly. Like it was very bizarre, but a very unique and interesting experience. So this is more, again, just to kind of show you where we were coming from. So we were basically coming from here to this little section right up here is where they flew us into. And what's interesting about that is as we're flying, and again, it's part of the sheer size of the state of Israel. It took us about 40 minutes to fly up there, and it took them about 3 hours or so to drive up there.
Oh.
So you can travel north to south in a day. So again, these are just some pictures outside of the helicopter, but you can see the green and everything they were doing, and that's going back to kind of what Israel has done. And I think there's some bitterness and some hate within a lot of those other Palestinian states because of they pour their stuff back into their state. You don't necessarily see that at some of the other states that are around them, Jordan and Egypt, and so they have created a desalination solution for the seawater. They recycle up to 85 to 90% of all run water waste to recycle to be put back into the agricultural aspect of things, to re-cleanse for water. So their advancements in technology are sometimes frustrating to others, I guess I would say, because of how advanced they are on certain things. This is us flying up the coast. This is us coming up and over Tel Aviv. But what was interesting is as you're flying along the coastline, if you look off to your right, you're able to see Jerusalem. You're able to see, that distance out there and how close it is. So it's that constant reminder of how close everything is there and how many of their perceived enemies are that close.
Yeah.
You know, everybody around them, for the most part,
Scary.
does not want them there. So it's very interesting. This was an olive field. You can see they have them covered with little tarps and everything like that to help with sun protection and everything. But again, massive fields like this, you know, lots and lots of stuff going on, lots of greenery. Again, my, you know, ignorance of, well, it's the desert. It's, you know, there's lots of sand and blah, blah, blah. And there's a lot of areas and places like this that you're going to see throughout the whole country of Israel.
I thought that there was more destruction in Tel Aviv than I see there.
So I'll show you some pictures of it, but the Iron Dome is the lifesaver. You know, it's you know, constantly going off and it's constantly protecting them. They've recently come out with the laser dome. I don't know if you've heard of that yet. It's a fraction of the cost, and it is truly designed as a laser to recognize ballistic missiles at their height and all of this, and they're firing a laser at it, heating it up to the point where it explodes.
But wasn't
So-
that the question, is why didn't the Iron Dome pick up?
Because so the Iron Dome is strategically located in multiple areas within Israel, but not down by Gaza. And so the attacks
Yeah.
cost. Because every time they're firing missiles to intercept, whereas now with the laser dome, and when I was there, it was supposed to be about 4 to 6 weeks out. So they're in the process of kind of putting it out there to start leveraging that. But it's a sheer cost thing. You know, they've got all of these. And I'll talk a little bit about Tel Aviv and kind of, it's very interesting because every one of their, you know, so think of Pentagon, you know, it's their Ministry of Defense, their Naval, their Air Force, all of these are downtown Tel Aviv. Every single one of them, and it's in this, it's kind of blocked off by a 10-foot wall that surrounds the whole block. I mean, it's beautiful architecture, but it is, it was very interesting to me why you would build all of your military commands in the down. It'd be like putting everything that we have as the United States in downtown Chicago, putting a fence around it and not allowing anybody in or out, but it's centrally located. So when they're attacking, they're trying to go after these locations. There's a Iron Dome within that facility, downtown Tel Aviv. So as these things are happening, you're hearing these rockets blast off from downtown. So it's like the business district of Chicago, and you've got a military arsenal that is firing off missiles to block incoming missiles.
Right.
It's completely, and I said to him, I was like, why? You know, what's the, why not move your military? And they're like, we've already got all of the infrastructure here. It's going to cost us literally billions of dollars to move these facilities to something a little bit more centralized within Israel. It's a little bit harder to get at, to all of that. So there's, you know, they're up against those factors as well. So we got to where we were going up in Haifa. I just thought it was very interesting. Again, you're in the Israeli state, and there are, what's the minaret? Minarets. Those are all over. You see them everywhere. And that's a call to the Muslim prayer at their 4 or 5 times a day. That's where they go up to and they'll call out. So at, I think it was like 4:30 in the morning, my hotel room's right next to it. You've got them calling out to call to prayer and everything like that. So it's very interesting at all of the religion that you have within the state of Israel. And it's just, you know, so it's constantly, you know, people trying to get along. And then you've got people that don't want you there, that hate you, that, you know, it's my state, it's your state, you know. So it was just very surreal to kind of sit outside on the patio of my hotel and, you know, be able to just, you know, have that out there. And again, it's just kind of that you're remembering, or you know, what we hear versus what the reality is. It's just, it's very, very, very interesting. And, you know, so yeah. So this was, I think Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday we're going to the Baha'i area. So right as you're looking north in Israel, this is considered Mount Carmel. which you've probably heard of and in many of your readings and stories. But the Baha'i Temple, this is where Baha'u'llah was buried, or the Shrine of the Bab, that's where he's buried. But this is the whole gardens and this structure here. So it's a massive gardens and structure that is considered their holiest ground. That's the Baha'is' holiest ground. And so that is part of, so that this comes into the solidarity mission. This is part of the grounds and everything that you're going to see. That is some of the most beautiful gardens you'll ever see. And there's wildlife in there. There's, it's literally hand manicured. As we were walking through, there was people that were trimming up the trees and the bushes and doing all of this. So
Is our temple here just a miniature of what the one is there?
So they
'Cause
all,
ours is phenomenal.
yeah, they can all do their own design. Typically, they're built with 9 sides, and we could never get to the reason why the 9-sided type of thing. Yes, it's that mind blowing. I mean, this one, as beautiful as it is, this completely puts it to the sheer magnitude of how much space and land it takes up. I mean, they built a bridge over a road so that they could continue on with it. Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable, and it's something I didn't know. I mean, heard of the Baha'i Temple, so I believe they have 9 other temples throughout the world, and they're very unique. Yeah, so I mean, if you were to type in Baha'i temples within, a Google search, it's gonna. I think it's 9, and they're throughout very large.
Okay.
They don't solicit funds for, and it's kind of the running joke of, we're with Jews and we're pretty forward about asking for money, quite honestly. They won't ask for money. It's all internal. So all of their internal folks do all of their donors. They're actually their director of, which was interesting to me. It's a gentleman he's a Secretary General of the Baha'i Faith. His name is David Rutstein, who actually used to be I believe at one time he was the Attorney General for the United States. And he had converted to the Baha'i Temple, Baha'i Faith. You don't have to do anything, like Judaism, there's some steps you go through. Christianity, there's steps you go through. Baha'i, you just, you openly recognize that you're gonna be a Baha'i, and you're embraced and accepted. It's a very interesting religion. It was one that I was still trying to wrap my head around on, but they raise all of their money internally. So they're expected on their internal community to create, they don't do fundraisers, they don't do anything like that. It's all based on being good, everybody does the same. So this is standing up at the very top of the north side of this, and that's kind of what you would see at, that's like at Wilmette or, Baha'i Temple there. But there were, I think so the way that they're set up is they have, I can't remember, I want to say it was 9 tiers down and 9 tiers up. So it's kind of like, and it goes down this way and then it comes up this way to meet in the middle there. All of their administrative, all of their bookkeeping, all of their history is all held on this site and everything. And that's the Mediterranean Sea. So this is on the northern part of Mount Carmel. Over here on this part is, this is a town called Acre, and that is where the guy following up after the Bab, who was one of the originators of the religion, he was actually imprisoned over on that side in a town called Acre. So it was very interesting to learn, but you can see, I mean, the grounds and the manicure and what they did and how they maintain this is really quite mind-boggling. But what they do is they have from all over the world, the different faiths or the different Baha'is that are out there, they donate their time for a year. And so they'll come from all over. There was one of the kids that we met there. I think he was like 18 or 19. Just before he goes off to university, he came and he's donating a year of his time to just kind of go around the grounds and help clean up and do different administrative tasks and things of that nature. So again, just some more pictures to show, you know, the beauty of it. I mean, they've got water that's running through it and streams that are running down the side. And, you know, again, it just an amazing facility, you know. I mean, it's like the Botanic Garden on steroids.
That's a good way of putting it.
And what's interesting is when you're in the buildings, and I think even if when you go, because you can go to the one over in Wilmette,
You go
it's
right in.
there's not a lot there, quite honestly. It's fairly barren and fairly empty. So it's very interesting when you go into these. Oh yeah, here, Bill.
Bill,
Bill.
Bill.
Bill. You good? Okay. So yeah, it's just very interesting to see because, oops, pardon me. There's really nothing in there. There's not, you know, like in this one, there is supposedly the remains of the Bob is buried in this one here. I don't know why they
And
should.
they're acoustically, I heard a concert in the temple,
Oh,
and their acoustics are absolutely perfect.
yeah. And
And it was all, you know, a cappella.
Mhm.
It was,
Yeah,
you felt
sure,
like
yeah.
you were going up to heaven.
Right,
and
right.
It was like, oh, man.
It's the whole idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It is, yeah, the ascent, right? Again, this is just us standing, so right behind us is the bridge that covers the road below us, but this is us looking north to where we started when I first showed that first picture, coming down all the way down here. So I forget how many steps they said. I think it's, there's thousands of steps that you're walking from the very bottom all the way to the top. Okay, so this is the prison that one of the Baha'u'llah was actually first held in, and this is still the original structure. So just to the right is the Mediterranean Sea. Just again, interesting pictures to see that this stuff was here 2,000 years ago. And still maintaining that structure and the integrity that it has. Let's see, I don't know if I got any. This was just a kind of a weird, creepy one. This is where they hung and persecuted, or hung and killed, whatever, the different Jewish folks, the Baha'i folks, anybody that was like kind of not in line with the government at that point in time. And again, just another mosque, and as you're looking out from this prison, these are all of the things that you're seeing there. So you're seeing all of this history and everything that's going on, and just the commingling between the religions, and yet there's still such heavy conflict and strife. And again, just part of the, so you can see the Mediterranean, and this is part of the prison that was there. So our next journey, so we came from, so we're still in the region of Haifa, but within the Mount Carmel. Up here was where the Baha'i organization, temple, and everything like that was. We came down to this area, Daliat al-Carmel, and this was part of our journey. Was we were coming down here to this portion of it to meet up with these three individuals, all high schoolers. And so we came down here. It's the Druze people. So I don't know how many people are familiar with Druze. Druze is a population of people. There's just about 1 million of them within the. There's about 1 million people that are of the Druze faith. And so what the Druze are they don't align with Muslim, they don't align with Judaism. They've got their own religion that they follow and that they believe themselves. Part of the reason that this is, why we came and visited these folks is part of the conflict is that the Druze people themselves, because they have their own kind of religion, and it's extremely, they're extremely religious to that aspect, where there are only elders that are able to read what we would consider the Bible or the Torah or something of that nature. There's only elders, and it's only passed down to them. So you're either kind of elected at birth, or you're elected to be able to be the next one to be the religious leader within your Druze community. There's approximately, I think it was about 250,000, 300,000 Druze that live in this area, Golan, kind of the northern part of Israel, most of them also recognize and believe or follow Syrian, so there's Syrian Druze, there's different Druze, and what they do is they still maintain their own religion, but they follow the state that they're in. So if you're Syrian, you're a Syrian Druze, and you fight and you protect your Syrian neighbors, your Syrian brotherhood. The Jewish ones, obviously, they fight for the state of Israel and within IDF. The conflict that's going on, and the reason that this was started for this group of kids is they don't have voting rights. Even though they fight in the IDF, they hold, higher leadership roles within Israel because they're not Jews. So within the Jewish state, as I understand it, you don't have voting rights to do this, and their struggle is, we're going to war for you. We should at least have the ability to say who's going to be. Part of the reason and the change for it is Israel felt, if you're not Jewish and you're living in our state, that's fine, but why do you have a say over our Jewish laws or the Israeli state laws, which are predominantly Jewish? So there's that conflict, but a lot of these folks, a lot of these kids' parents are fighting in the IDF. More per capita, so if you look at their 250,000 population, Druze die in the wars that are going on within Israel than the Israeli. Now it's obviously it's skewed because of the numbers and everything like that, but in the end, that is their kind of conflict is, hey, we're gonna fight for you. We're gonna be loyal to the state of Israel. We believe in what the IDF is doing and what we're doing. Even though we have our own religious belief, we believe in what is here. We just would like to have the ability to vote on certain things. So there's that conflict. So the reason this got started and we met with these folks here is that the JUF, in partnership with a federation out of Israel, has created a program that they are taking young kids, 15-year-old is usually, 15 to 17 is usually when they get introduced to the program. They take them and they help them build leadership skills. They are helping them create the opportunity for them to be able to go out and have these conversations at a much higher level, understanding what's going on within the community itself, and really be able to articulate. These three kids were, kind of the top in their program, and they came in and they spoke to us about what they're doing. Yeah.
You take an ordinary citizen of Israel, how much obligation do you have to the government? Some people, the rule of thumb is if a person should be devoted to your family obligations, to your community, to your government, and there's one more. We've got a young friend in Vernon Hills, my grandson. He has a friend that graduated at Stevenson High School, and he immediately went from graduation to Israel. How devoted is the citizen of Israel to their government?
So every Israeli, whether you're male or female, is required to be a part of the military for a minimum of 2 years. Depending on where you're at, you can support it in a different capacity, but everybody goes to the IDF, Israeli Defense Foundation. So you're committing 2 years. So your grandson, your son, everybody would give 2 years of commitment to fight for Israel. So there's nothing more, and then it's up to you whether you stay longer or whether you back out of it. So
they were called home?
They're called, well, or if you're an American Jew, okay, you have the right to go over there and fight for Israel. You can go and sign up. So my children, it would be a little bit more interesting for me because there's also different levels within Israel as far as like acceptance of me being a Jew. Like the ultra-Orthodox would not accept me as a Jew because of my conversion. The Reform and conservative, maybe, as long as I can prove that there are certain things that I've done to be a Jew. But the Orthodox would definitely not accept me. Now my children, if they all three wanted to, they could go over to Israel. They've got what is called birthright. So they all are invited for free, basically, as long as we, and they'll even compensate on plane tickets and things like that. But they go over there and they get anywhere from 7 to 13 days of being able to travel the country of Israel as a birthright. My children also were able to go when they're 8th grade. They went over through something that's part of our community temple with an alignment to the Israeli side of things. So they went over there. My oldest son did. My middle son has not because it was during COVID. My youngest daughter, most likely, she will as well go over there. But they could go over and fight in Israel and they would be accepted. No questions asked, because in Judaism, it's the mother's bloodline. So they're considered full Jews because of my wife's bloodline.
But they're not required to.
They're not required to. As an
But in
American
Israel
Jew,
they are, but American.
correct.
Okay.
Born Israelis, and that's part of the reason that the Druze community, they're Israeli born, but they're not Israeli.
Right.
They choose to go and do this. It's actually an expectation within the Druze community that you go and do that. They don't have to, because they can be protected by their own community to some extent, more so on the female side. They're a little bit more of, we're going to protect the female side of it. But all of them have said they will be going to the IDF. All three of those kids, when you asked, not even a hesitation. At 17, the young man in there, I think he was 18, not even a hesitation. We all asked, will you guys fight for the IDF? He said, of course, that's part of our obligation to our state and to our community, because the community believes wholeheartedly that they should be doing that. So it's very, it's very interesting, because I think that mentality was a while ago that, hey, people would join into the military and be a part of it. I don't think there is as much here in the United States of like, hey, we're going into the military, this is the background. There's an expectation that, it's not an expectation, there's a requirement as an Israeli that you will go to fight in the IDF. Now, that being said, a lot of them parlay that into very, very lucrative, prominent degrees because of the security and what they do. So a lot of people that I work with, so I work in the cybersecurity space. I sell cybersecurity. A lot of the technologies that I sell and resell are all from the IDF, a division, I believe it's the 8200 division. It's their cyber defense division. A lot of the folks that come out of there, because of the way they're set up, they can create this stuff within, when they're working for this unit within the IDF. It's kind of the anti-terror, counterterrorism, anti-terrorism, a lot of the whole jumping into how are we going to defend Israel against the terrorists and everything that are out there. A lot of them parlay that into careers where they create their own companies. So I would say, of the technologies that I sell to companies here in North America, 75% of them are Israeli based.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable. I mean, most people wouldn't know, PayPal, all of these different types of technologies that are out there. Most likely there's either a co-founder that is Israeli, or it is a full Israeli-based company.
Better than China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's extremely, it's interesting, and kind of, again, the expectation. But I think that's, did that answer your question for the most part? Yeah. So it's, but that's the reason that, it was very interesting meeting these folks, because while they were born in Israel, they are a Muslim descent, kind of, type of thing. But without hesitation, everybody that we talked to immediately said, yeah, we'll go to the IDF, we'll defend we'll defend the state of Israel. So it's a very different approach and mentality, and kind of engagement aspect of it when talking to these people. And again, it's part of it is, yes, there's that you have to, but none of them felt, it was never, hey, I have to do this. It was, this is my obligation. I want to do
It's their
this.
home, and
It
they're
is.
getting.
They're going to defend it, yeah.
They're going from Israel.
So, all right. So we met with these folks. They talked about their story, and 10-year program. So they're following it through to really see kind of what growth and what happens here. So these three were all in either their second or third year. And now what they'll do is they'll carry through. What are they doing? The young lady in the middle, it was very interesting. One of her topics that she was wrestling with, and how is she going to bring things together, is all of the questions she gets when what is she going to do with her life when she graduates. We've all done it. We've done it to our grandchildren. We've done it to our children. What are you going to do when you grow up? Where are you going to college? And so part of hers was, that's really great, but you're asking a kid who has no idea what the heck they're going to do in life. What are you going to do for the rest of your life? And she's like, the stress that is put on. And so she recognized that as something that not only within their community of the Druze, but in the greater community of children and teenagers and high schoolers, it can be a very anxiety-driven conversation for them. And so that was one of her things, was she came back and is working with the high school that she went to. She's going to be working as part of the university. She's going to be working within her community to help kind of address those, not only for the kids, but also to the parents, to say, hey, let's figure out a different way we can approach this, on how we can get our children to, one, be more engaged on what they want to do and what they want to accomplish, but how do they do that? So again, I look at these kids who are dealing with, and I've got a 17-year-old and I've got a 20-year-old and a 10-year-old, and I look at these kids, and what they grow up in is a completely different thing than what my children are growing up in, right? These kids have to worry about, they will eventually go to war at some point. They will serve in the military. Not only do they have to do all of those things, but then they have to also determine, are they staying within their own community? Within the Druze community, it's very, 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 very tight-knit. So there's the concern of, who's going to be the next religious leader within their community?
Sure.
All of these different things that these kids are dealing with and having to address. And so it was also, for me, putting perception around my child. I'm like, I love my kids, but I don't know if they have the wherewithal to understand of what going to war is at 17 or 18, or the fact that they're just going to do it. It's not a matter of, hey, I got an option. That's what they're going to do. So again, just very interesting to hear the perspective and be a part of it, because again, I didn't know it, even, being Jewish for the last 15 years, being in a Jewish family for 30 years, you don't hear about this. Even the Jews that live here in America, they're not fully aware of what's going on over there. They hear what they want unless they do the research and the angling and figuring out what they want to be doing and stuff. So it was very cool to be able to be a part of that and hear these, the conversations. Very traditional food. We had lunch right afterwards. Very traditional, hummus. Pardon me, and hummus and pitas and chicken and very, very common. Goat was one of is a very big one as well. But very traditional, wonderful food and everything like that. But very welcoming. They were just engaging with us and wanted to have the conversation with us. So after this, that was part of up in Haifa and Mount Carmel. We ended up traveling back down to Tel Aviv. So this is Tel Aviv. So we went to, this was one of the main hospitals that was receiving a lot of the helicopter airlift of a lot of the folks that were being hurt and killed and shot and everything like that. So one of the things that they did here, and I'll see, I don't know if this is, yeah, I'll give you kind of a view from it. It's just more of a cool experience. A little fast, and I'll try to stop at one point. Okay, so you can barely see it. I've got another picture, I think, but if you look right through here, that is where one of the missiles from Iran hit during when Iran was attacking with the ballistic missiles, when they launched like 2,000 plus missiles or whatever. That was one of the structures in downtown Tel Aviv that they hit. That was kind of a shrapnel off of that. But there's still people in that facility and still living there, right? They build these so that they can withstand this type of, destruction. So very again, it's like downtown Chicago. Bombs going off, ballistic missiles being fired at them. But it's still life as normal, and it just goes on. So very fast, I apologize, but kind of doing that 360. So when we came to the hospital, what they were doing is they were introducing us to one of the head of the surgical unit over there that created a kind of the way in which they would be receiving all of these folks, because they were coming in, you know, the Black Hawk helicopters that were coming into Gaza, they were immediately landing, throwing on the patients onto the helicopter, and then 15 minutes later they were up here in Tel Aviv, right? But it was, how do they deal with the trauma? How do they deal with this mass incoming of casualties and everything like that? And they just hadn't, because a lot of it was done, you know, historically, a lot of like your triage and everything is done at the battlefield. Here they were recognizing that by the time they were doing that, tourniqueting, putting people there, they weren't able to save their lives because there was too much time between when they were actually going to have it, because of where the war was actually happening. So they had devised a plan to, as they bring them in here, they get them onto the landing, and it was, they went from, there's a proper terminology, and it's a military terminology that I wasn't familiar with, but it's kind of, essentially it's like your death rate. Of from how much time do you have, and then what does that percentage look like? Like how fast can you collapse? What is going to be, who's going to survive kind of mentality. And, you know, before, when they were doing like the triage within Gaza or wherever it was, I think it was like up around 12% were actually surviving. So it was a very low number. You know, and then what they were able to condense it down into by creating this kind of fly them in here. You've got someone who's dealing with, you know, the heart. You've got someone who's dealing with plastic surgery. You've got someone who's dealing with the lungs. You've got someone who's dealing with the gastro, and you know, a gastro part of it. And so this surgeon was just, hey, here's who you go with, here's who you're dealing with, and they would just kind of point them out. So they created it, and what it ended up happening is it shaved off, I think it was another like 6 to 7% on the. They decreased the overall death rate down by that much. So all of these things were being done on the fly, right? You know, because Israel had never dealt with this kind of war before. You know, this was all fresh territory for them and everything. Yeah, this one is, again, the same picture, but I will, oops. So you can kind of see a bit of the destruction from the bomb and where it had hit, and the shrapnel, and how it did all of this. Again,
Building is still standing.
downtown, you know, it's like downtown Chicago. It's like the Sears building, right? You know, or something like that. So, you know, again, everyday life, this is what they live in. But as you can see, just kind of back in the background, let me see if I can. No, it's not going to do it for me. You can see all of the cranes, though.
Yeah.
They're always building or rebuilding, or, you know, to that extent. Oops. So as part of that, let's see. So we went in, and then, you know, another thing, and I know I'm running tight on time. I don't know, people, is everybody good? We're good? Okay. So one of the other things that they did is they actually brought us into, they brought us a soldier, this gentleman here, Yari. He's the one on the left. This is actually in Gaza, right? This would have been, what was it? It would have been just after the initial attack, when Israel was going back into Gaza, doing all of the destruction, going house to house, room to room, everything like that. So we met him. This gentleman, when we met him, he was just out of his second tour. So he came back on October 7th of 2023 from his honeymoon with his wife. As soon as he got back, he went directly and reported to the military. Went in, they didn't have anything for what he had done his first tour on. He was a kind of just infantry, so they brought him into the engineering side of it. So his second tour, he was doing more engineering type of stuff, going out and bomb sniffing, doing things of that nature with his crew. During that outing, he was, so what they would do is they would go in and they would put, they would find like a tunnel entrance or whatever, and they would cover the tunnel entrance, and then they would have a drone flying over above, and they would drop in kind of like a gas type of detonator or a gaseous type of explosion. And what it would do is it would send it throughout the tunnel system, and it would make poofs of smoke that would come out. So as the drone's flying over, they're able to see all of the different areas and different outs for all of the tunnels that they have within there. as he said, he was like, it's not a very cool battle wound, but he's like, when he was doing that, one of the flaps on it came up and the gas blew him backwards. So he got blown back. So this was in his second duty. When we met him, he was just finally over recovering. And it had caused some larynx damage, it had caused some facial damage and everything like that, but he was okay. But he had shared this picture with us and was telling about it. And I'll finish in just a minute, but he was sharing some stories. So this is the battlefield in Gaza, and everything. And so you're just, he's sharing kind of, the camaraderie, what they're doing, hiking around. This is one of the caches that they would get from going door to door within the different housing units and Hamas. This was what they would get roughly every day. Each one of the units would pull this many different types of bombs, RPGs, homemade bombs, grenades that you can see up in the top. All of these are their ammunitions and bullets. These two actually, what they would do is those were actually bombs that Israel had sent over that had actually detonated, that the Hamas were actually pulling back in and rebuilding and creating their own bombs that they could send back to Israel. But this is just like a daily thing. He was like, he's like, we would all come back together at nights or whatever, and we would all kind of like who had the most stuff. But this happened, he said this went on like this for the first 6 to 8 weeks when they were going through the insurgents. They would walk in, they would open a door, there'd be machine guns behind it, RPGs underneath the sinks. The drawers they'd have handguns in the drawers and everything like this. So it was very, that's where all the aid and everything comes from. Like that's where, the money and everything that's coming in, and that's the thing. As a lot of them spoke about it, they talked about the fact that, especially people that had people who were taken as hostages, they're like, we're not against aid. We just want to make sure that the aid we're giving is going to the people of Gaza. That's what we want, most concerned with. We support that, but that's the problem. They're like, you don't see that. That's not what actually is happening. These people are, Hamas is taking it, and then they'll dole it out when they feel necessary, but we're giving them non-perishable goods, and they said, well, let's not do that. Let's give them perishable goods. Let's give them goods, and we'll just make them more consistent drop-offs. We'll give them bread, we'll give them vegetables, we'll give them all of this, because they're taking the flour, they're taking the sugar, they're taking all of these non-perishable things, and they're stockpiling it all in these tunnels and everything. So again, all of this type of stuff that's going on and the way in which you're doing things is just very, we don't hear about it. We're not, privy to that information. Let's see. This was just one of the, so Yari, who was the soldier that was in that first photo that we were talking to, this was one of the things that he couldn't understand. He's like, all right, he's like, I get you hate Jews, but he's like, what's up with the swastikas? And so it was one of those things where he's like, none of us could ever figure it out. Like, what is the tie between, what we can see Nazi, aspects of things and that. And he had made it, he said, essentially it came down to, they hate us that much that they don't care who they side with, as long as it's death to the Jews. So again, very, crazy things that you're hearing and so much hatred. But as the soldier said, he's like, the thing is he's like, they are so well organized and so well put together. He's like, yeah, they come off as, they're dressing in whatever and they're a bunch of schlubs and they blah, 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 blah. He's like, they are so well organized. He's like, they have down to our holidays. They know exactly what holidays we're having, when they're going to fall, what is the Jewish New Year, when are all of these things. They have books. He's like, we found a book that one of their up and rising lieutenants had that had all of this laid out. So he's like, they're extremely well funded, they're extremely knowledgeable. He's like, they're no joke. He's like, and he felt, he's like, that's part of the problem that he said when he conveyed it back to his leadership was, hey, we've got these issues, we've got these concerns that we're not able to, we don't know our enemy as well as their enemy knows us, type of thing. So again, just really crazy, like, interesting things. And this is one of those firsthand things. So so after that, we left Yari, and he was extremely awesome too. To tie off on him, so he did his first tour, came out, got married, went in for a second tour, came out because he was injured, and immediately signed up again. And so part of that conversation with him was, because once you've been injured, you don't have to re-enlist. And part of it, he's like, and this goes back to kind of your community. He's like, those are my brothers out there. He's like, I'm not going to be with them. And he's like, yes, I have to deal with my wife and the fact that I'm leaving my 7-month-old child here. But he's like, that's what we do. So again, it's that mentality. It's that, the fact that their community ties and strengths are so strong, and their relationships with their brothers that are already there, they all re-enlist, even if they've been injured and hurt. They don't care. That's part of their upbringing. It's part of how they were raised, is that this is what we do and this is how we're going to get through it and everything. So very, very, heavy and interesting and everything like that. So we left him and walked over to what is considered, this is Hostage Square. So you're seeing a lot of, depending on how much news and what you follow, this is where a lot of the protests within Tel Aviv were happening. This specific area, and I'll try to stop it if I can at the right, it's going to go fairly quick. Okay, so the tall buildings in the background, if you're looking, that's kind of where all of their military defenses, the IDF headquarters, it's right there. And it was strategically done this way. They put it there because there was that battle of the politics between the people that are saying bring these people home versus the military who says we're going to flatten Gaza. So it's kind of that point of their, Bibi would walk out and he would see all of these people, and so he's now having to deal with the families of the hostages, and so he's having to see it. So it's that, again, that political conflict, that aspect of things where you're just like, what is going on here? What's happening? So it's very interesting that, what kind of role and how that all played into kind of how things were done. So again, this has just been set up so that people can go, they can go down there, and kind of check things out. So you can't, I don't know. Okay, so right there on the right-hand side, you see kind of this entrance here. So what they did is they reconstructed a mock tunnel of what these hostages were going through. Wow. And I don't,
Did you go in?
I did, and it was horrific. Because they set it up so that you've got all of the echoing and the listening of people on the outside of the cave. You can hear the screams, you can hear the soldiers, you can hear the rifles cocking, and it's, I'm 6 foot and I was ducking down, so it was definitely under 5 foot high when you walk into it. So you're always crouching over, and you can hear, because of the way that they did it, you can hear, like I said, the screams and and people walking around, and it was one of those where that was just mind blowing. You walk in there and you're like, oh my God, because you feel it. You feel that you're being compressed into this. Yeah. And this is, again, concrete or whatever. Theirs was all dirt and everything like that. But that's what, you're kind of experiencing and seeing and everything like that. So they brought it and made it real for the people that hadn't ever been a part of that. Again, just another one of those signs of how many days that the hostages haven't been back, that they've been left over there and everything like that. So this was, so right there in front is part of the Ministry of Defense. You can see so what had happened and right next to it is the Iron Dome, right behind this building here, right inside, drop it down there. But one of the missiles came in and just missed. The Iron Dome didn't get it off, fast enough. So it blew out all of the windows within the Ministry of Defense, but again, all of this is right downtown Tel Aviv, which is just, when I'm down in the city or whatever, you walk around and it's all about mass casualties. How much damage can be done? And that's the reason that they're firing and doing things like that. Right, exactly. And so it's just, again, it's because one of the things I was talking with one of the guys that was with us, I'm like, I can only imagine how loud it is. He's like, it's deafening. He's like, it will drop you to your knees. He's like, because these missiles are firing at a rapid pace, to keep up with everything, especially when they had the over 2,000 rockets that were launched at them. Where was this one? Let's see. So that's the wall that keeps out the, so everything on that side of the wall is all Ministry of Defense. Everything there is the defense, like I said, the naval, the Air Force, all of the different militaries. Think of our Pentagon. All of those things are all jammed in that area, and that's kind of the conversation of why don't they move it? You know, why would you do it right downtown of one of your largest cities? You know, around. Okay, so that kind of, well, so I'll go back a little bit and talk. So after we were done with the kind of that, we were on our way and we were walking past kind of where all the military defense and everything, and we went over and we met a gentleman by the name of it was Daniel Lifshitz, and he was the grandson of his grandson, and his parents or grandparents were taken hostage. His grandmother, you guys may recall, I don't know, she was one of the first ones that was released. She was released because one of the doctors for Hamas had been keeping an eye on her. She had lost, and she was released after I think it was like 13 days. Within that 13 days, she'd lost about 35 pounds. So she had gotten very sick. They were starving her. They were, trying to give her some foods, but just enough. She got some sort of a bacterial sickness. And essentially the Hamas doctor came in and said, either you have to kill her or you release her, because whatever she has is going to spread throughout. So they didn't release her because it was the right thing. Yeah. They didn't want to get sick. So when they released her, and this is something that you can probably talk to most Israelis and most people I talk to, Israel is terrible at marketing. Horrible. I mean, as you guys can, it's been a big, giant marketing nightmare mess for them with the way that they convey their messages, how they get their word out. They just are more of that, I guess I would say they're more of the hammer versus kind of the, methodology, in the sense that they just come in and they say, whatever, we're just going to blow you up. We're going to destroy you, whatever. They don't do a good job of communicating these types of stories. Like, no one hears about these types of stories. So when his grandmother came back, instead of having the wherewithal to sit down with her and talk about things, they just let her go out into the media right off the bat. She hadn't even been, I don't think she'd even been back for 24 hours. And so when she went out to the media, she talked about these Hamas soldiers who had helped her with her sickness. And so she said, they treated me fairly well. Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily, while that may be some truth to that, that doesn't paint the whole picture that she was starved for the previous 13 days, that she was drug in, wrapped in a rug. That was the lady who was wrapped in a rug and then carried off on the motorcycle and beat with sticks and all of this. She's not conveying the true story. She's giving a snippet of it. And everybody ran with that snippet that Hamas is good and they took care of her and they weren't such bad people even though they kidnapped her. So it was one of those things where, the grandson was talking about that, and he's like, it was very frustrating. He's like, because where was the government to help make sure that she was ready to have the conversation? Not that they were trying to stop her from having a conversation. It was making sure that she was prepared to have that conversation in a way that was going to be representative of what she actually went through. Yeah. So she was brought back. Her husband, his grandfather, spent he didn't come back. I think it was just... And he did not come back alive. He was brought back and given back after he'd already been deceased. But he got found out that he could speak Arabic because one of his wife's friends that was in there was like, why aren't you talking to them? And he was like, I'm staying quiet because I didn't want to be able to communicate. Then they found out, and then they ended up killing him because he was trying to trick them. So it was just a whole bunch of just, crazy circumstances and things that happened. But we met with his grandson. He was someone who was just very proactive on getting the hostages home. He didn't want it to be, while he felt that Gaza should probably be leveled, he did not feel until the hostages were brought back should we do anything like that. So again, the conflict of the grandchildren and the grandparents and everything kind of playing into it. So that was a very powerful conversation. He was very emotional, but very held together. But you could see he was just, he was conflicted himself. because he wanted to do more, but he couldn't really do more, things of that nature. So that was on Thursday. Thursday evening, we drove to Jerusalem. And so we came in a kind of a different route. We came in through like the West Bank area, actually, or along it. Saw Jaffa in the background. One of the guys that I was with, I don't know, anybody ever seen the show Fauda? I don't know. It's on Netflix. It's actually a very good, they do a very good job of representing kind of the conflict that's going on, and kind of when you're seeing these folks go into, whether it's the West Bank or whether they're going into Gaza, how they're going in there as Israeli, as Israelis trying to either get people back or not. It is in, it's worth the watch. It's a little bit longer of a season, but I was talking to this one gentleman about it, and I said how accurate it is, and he's like, well, they definitely do way more planning than what is shown in there, but the way in which they're going in, whether it's through a van or it's a handful of them are going in and, they're portraying themselves as, what's the proper word? As like caterers and doing different things. They're going in and they're kind of infiltrating to try to get back people or kidnap, or go and get people who are on kind of their watch list and things of that nature. He's like, for the most part, he's like, that's spot on how they do that, from the disguises, all the things like that. And it's a rabbit hole you can go down, but if you can go and look into like Mossad and some of the things that they've done, it's pretty mind-blowing at what they've accomplished. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember the whole beeper thing that happened about, I think it was, about a year or so ago, where that had been a plan that they had put together years ago, but they created beepers and they attached them, and everybody had taken, all of these high executives, and they had planned it so it all went off at the same time. I mean, and again, it's you have to look at it and try to figure out, is it right, is it wrong? But what they've done to defend themselves and protect themselves is, they've done some pretty, you can go down a pretty big rabbit hole in having that conversation and looking into it. But if you're interested, it's definitely something to look into. So we came into Jerusalem. This is basically the old city, where you're going to find basically 4 religious groups. You're going to have Muslim, Armenian, and Jewish and Christian, all kind of within this area. And that's kind of like, they're all kind of working towards one another. It's very, very weird to walk through it, because you're walking down one side that's heavily Muslim, and then you're seeing a Jewish side on the next side, or you're seeing a Christian side on the other side. So very, very interesting. And that's why I say, if you've never been, and I know it's not an easy flight, but it's pretty remarkable. So I was staying, our hotel was back over in this area, and we came in through Tower of David and Jaffa. And if I'm remembering correctly, through the history of it, this is kind of where Christ had walked as part of his kind of like last journey and stuff like that. The Church of the Sepulchre is right over here, and I've got a very interesting picture that I'll show. Is right over here, and then you've got the Western Wall over there. It's very interesting because, in pictures, the Western Wall is this massive structure, and and while it's very massive, don't get me wrong, it's kind of small. It's as overwhelming as it is, it was also a little bit underwhelming, because I always pictured it this big, huge, and again, it is very large, but it's just in the whole kind of scheme of things, it was a little bit different. So what was interesting to me, so everything in Jerusalem has to be covered from a building facade in Jerusalem stone. Doesn't matter where it's at. Everything has to be Jerusalem stone. So you see all the structures very similar, but they've got different tones and different whatever. What was interesting is this was kind of our walk into the Tower of David towards the Western Wall. Extremely modernized. Like these are all shopping centers. This is a mall that we were walking through. And we walked for maybe, 3 football fields, and then that pops up.
Yeah.
So it's such a mixture of old and new and everything. So this is the Tower of David.
Wow.
And so you can see kind of the different colorations of stone. So I think this one was kind of the first foundational. That was like I think they said like 3,000 years ago. And then you came into this portion, and this was 2,000 years ago, and this was 1,000 years ago, and then this was the final one that was 500 years ago. So it's all of this architecture that you're seeing, and how they continually built off of everything and continued to build it up, and just very interesting. I mean, if you look up here, like this area, there is you see some holes. That's where they pour the hot oil out of. Like you see these old time shows, and that's legitimate. You look up and you're like, oh my gosh, that's where they would have dumped hot oil on me, kind of thing, if I was sneaking in. This one was just interesting because it's a Jewish couple. That is the the Dome of the Sepulchre, and then you've got one of the Marinettes in the background. So again, it's all of this. It seemed very ironic to me in the sense that you're seeing all of these different religions that have such a storied conflict of one another, but they're all right here. It's literally right back to back. This was just another view coming into it. The wall is just over to the right over here, and everything like that.
Dome of the Rock.
Yeah,
Don't have
exactly.
back, yeah.
Correct. So that's the Wailing Wall.
Wailing Wall.
Yeah. So what was very interesting is because we were coming in, this was at 11:30 at night, on Thursday night. Part of what was going on was, because the high holidays, this was right before Rosh Hashanah, it's kind of like pilgrimage is not the right word, but you have lots of Jews that are coming in to pray and be a part of the holiday and everything like this. So I would say there's probably 1,500-ish or so people right now, maybe. And by the time we left, so we were like, what is going on here? A lot of people were coming in. There was probably close to 15 to 20,000 people that had come in there by the time we had left.
Wow.
So it was, just the corridors, and so it's all a bunch of winding roads, but they have these corridors that are driving the people into it and everything like that. But you're seeing all of these different, everybody coming down to go and pray at the wall. So everybody up at the front of the wall is saying, the prayers, and putting in pieces of paper, and you leave these papers in there, and you kind of hold it out for. It's kind of a way to tie the prayer to the wall and kind of everything that it means.
Is there any security there? What is to prevent somebody from just wrapping bombs around themselves? And going
There
to
is
the
a metal
Wailing Wall?
detector. Yeah, there are metal detectors, and there are people standing with guns. But because of the mass amount of people, it was very low key, which was very interesting. It's very, you're kind of like, all right, this is, especially again, knowing you have all of these different conflicting religions right there. Again, just seeing all of the people and kind of, it was very interesting because you would see people that were, begging for money, like you would see, it was a whole, different types of, Jewish sects in there within the religion. You can see more of the Orthodox over here. There was a few that had on, and I forget the terminology for them, but the big, huge fur hats and big, like there was, it was, so you saw all different kinds of people. There was a rabbi that came and met us, and his son, it was kind of like the thing to do on a Thursday night was go to the Wailing Wall. And so his 13-year-old son was out there with a bunch of his buddies going and hanging out and checking things out and doing it. So again, very, very, very interesting. I look at my child, I'm like, I don't see them going, So this was the next day, and this is just, so my buddy and I, Steve, we went to one of the restaurants near the Shook. The Shook is a open air market that all of the, everybody goes to. It closes down at around 2:30 or 3 on Friday, but everybody goes there to buy their, Shabbat dinners and, buy preparation and everything like this. We went to a restaurant, and this is, hopefully it's the right one, where they are, this is, come on, catch up. The reason I shared this one is because this is right before Shabbat. So everybody's getting ready and they're all hyped up for it, and Shabbat is happening, and so it was very cool to see that. if it's something you haven't experienced, Shabbat's very important to the Jewish people, and it's kind of that going into their their holiday or into their weekend, and so everybody is kind of just having a great time. They're very happy and they're very talkative about what's happening, and just very enthusiastic about Shabbat, and that's how it is pretty much every Friday at all of the different restaurants within the area. And they close. I think it's like 4 or 5. They're all closed down and everything, and the streets are very, very quiet. But just kind of the excitement behind it, even with everything going on, it's like it's still part of who they are. This was Friday morning, him and I going back to the wall, and there was nobody there. It was very, very desolate at the time. So again, people not coming because of the holiday or because of Shabbat and everything. This was just one on our way home from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. This was one of the prisons that's right outside of the West Bank where they maintain and